3. Hello and welcome to another edition of the C Squared podcast. This is your host Curtis with my co-host Aaliyah, and we are here today with Jamey, who is a podcaster and he's a blogger. He's going to be talking to us about a whole bunch of different things, mainly to do with podcasting and blogging and all sorts of stuff like that. We're probably going to talk about records, doom metal, because Jamey's into all that type of stuff. Anyways, we'll figure it out as we go along here. But for question number 1, over to Aaliyah.
Well, thank you for coming on the podcast today, Jamey.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Of course. To start things off, could you give our listeners a little brief summary of who you are and what you do in the realms of metal?
It all started with, I guess, the Fistful of Doom show. It's a podcast. Usually it's a bi-weekly podcast where I play the finest sounds from the heavy metal underground. Eventually, I joined Doom Charts as a contributor and the Ripple Effect blog as a contributor as well. So I guess that's it.
All right. How did you get hooked up with the Ripple Effect?
If I remember correctly, Todd, I saw a message from Todd, and I think it was one of the metal Facebook groups just saying that they were looking for reviewers. So if you're interested in doing reviews for the Ripple Effect blog, send him a message. I got in touch with him shortly after that, and it basically all just got started from there. It didn't take me long to figure out that I really did not like doing reviews, though. Because I don't know, I just always, I felt like I was agonizing over every word that I was writing. I'm not sure why. So eventually I just started doing interviews and written interviews and premieres and stuff like that, which is much more in my comfort zone and takes me a whole lot less time to accomplish.
Sure. Curtis, do you have a follow-up?
I do, actually. So this is kind of like going off on a tangent here, but I'm going to do it anyways because we're talking about the interviews. So what's up with the doobies or boobies?
I actually got that from an interview that a lot of times when I'm going to do an interview, I'll look at that person's, Twitter page or Facebook page or the band's Facebook page or whatever the case may be. And just looking for, I have a bank of questions, but I'm always looking for something more specific to that person or band or whatever. And so it was, I believe, Psychedelic Love Child that I was cooking up some interview questions for, and I was scrolling through there. I don't remember if it was Twitter or Facebook, and I don't remember how that question came up, but it was on there, somewhere on their page was doobies or boobies, and I just thought that was funny. So I added that. I'm always looking for just out-of-pocket stuff like that, like do unicorns sleep standing up? I got that from Otto Kinzel. He's in Dust Prophet, and I was scrolling through his Facebook page, and I think he had shared a post where his daughter had asked him that one time, and I thought that is an excellent question. So I've had that also in my questions ever since. It's not because I'm obsessed with doobies or boobies.
Okay. Now, how many times have you ever had the question not answered? Because it's in every single one. I know I've had almost every single time someone gets the question, I'm like, what?
That question has actually been answered every single time. Now,
wow.
Okay. I did have a band, and I can't even remember the name of it, of the band, but the guy emailed me and was like, man, do I have to answer the goofy questions? And he wasn't that was before that question was in there. I think one of the questions he was referring to was, I just depending on the band, I try to change this question up a little bit, but the heavier the band, the more likely they are to get the question of what is their favorite Taylor Swift song. And some people, I guess they don't like that, or I don't know. Some people, I don't want to say that they don't have a sense of humor, but I like to keep things light, shake it up a little bit.
Totally.
And so I like to ask questions like that. And I'm not offended at all if they don't want to answer it for whatever reason, if they don't find that stuff amusing, if they
Sure.
take their art so seriously, or, they think it's offensive for some reason, say, doobies or boobies, that's okay. I understand everybody's different, but
yeah,
I like to keep it light and try to have a little fun with it. So, unicorns and Taylor Swift and all that stuff.
Fair. Now, just my last follow-up question before I give over to Aaliyah. So Aaliyah plays symphonic metal. So if you were doing an interview with her band, Shield of Wings, what would be the silly question you would ask a symphonic metal band, out of curiosity?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I would just, because a lot of times what I do as well is I look at where they're from, where they're located, and then I might try to think of an artist or somebody that just totally has nothing to do with metal.
Fair.
And go from there. And it doesn't always have to be. It's always funner for me if it's silly, but sometimes you can't come up with something,
Fair.
absurd, I think a lot of people are not thrown off by being asked what's their favorite Britney Spears song. They just kind of roll with the punches. So if I can come up with something good, I try my damnedest to come up with something that at least I find amusing, but I can't always, sometimes it takes a bit. I can't just off the cuff come up with stuff.
Fair enough. All right, back over to Aaliyah.
Yeah, and I think Britney Spears is widely accepted in the metal community as one of the best pop artists. So I know all of my friends love a good Britney Spears song. So why don't we talk a little bit about the Flatulent Fuzz name? You mentioned before we got on the call that it was your gamer tag, but where did it come from? If you care to share, you don't have to.
Well, whenever you're doing anything like that, trying to come up with a handle or whatever you want to call it, it always benefits you on some level to come up with something that someone else hasn't thought of, because you don't want to be, Halloween Witch 8003 just so that you can get that name, because names that have already been selected, obviously it won't let you have. So you'll have to add, numbers or some unique characters or whatever to the end of it to get there. Anyway, so I kind of like the goofy questions we were talking about, or the silly questions. I like to have fun with it as much as I can. And so I was talking to my wife about it, and I said, I want to come up with some kind of name for this, for my gamer tag, but I'm not sure what to do. I want to, I threw out a couple of things. I think I had like Pope Flatulence or something like that, but I was just like, I that's just not doing it for me. I don't like that. But somehow I want like flatulent in there. And, she looked at me funny for a minute, and then she said, and then she just blurted out, well, what about like Flatulent Fuzz? What about that? And I was like, oh, yes, that is a great name.
Got a nice ring to it.
It was just born out of,
a collaborative
trying to
effort.
entertain myself mainly.
So one question I have for you, it's how did you get into metal? Like, what were your gateway bands?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm 47 years old, and I didn't really start getting like deep into it like I have over it was probably, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago where I really started. I didn't even know there was a heavy metal underground before that.
Okay.
So it was 7 or 8 years ago when I started going that direction. But it's not like I'd never heard any heavy metal before, but it was stuff like Metallica or Black Sabbath or stuff like that. And although I enjoyed that stuff, I wasn't a metalhead. I didn't grow up a metalhead. I still don't consider myself a metalhead, even though I do listen to a lot of that stuff. I just don't define myself that way. So the earliest that I can remember thinking that, yes, I know that this is like heavy metal is Metallica. That was around, I don't know, probably like 87 or 88, Master of Puppets. That was one of the first heavy metal albums, or probably the first heavy metal album that I listened to. And I just listened to that like over and over for some years. And but that really didn't get me like down the rabbit hole of heavy metal, although I did listen to that one repeatedly. I was still listening to more just like rock and pop and stuff like that, until like I said, it was probably 7 or 8 years ago when I was like, oh my, there's a heavy metal underground. No idea. And I just kind of started looking through stuff. One of the first bands that I came across that I guess would kind of be at the top of the heap of the underground, but I didn't know it at the time, was Sleep. And so I listened to Dope Smoker and I was like, whoa, that really kind of blew me away a little bit. I was like, wow, this is amazing, and so it was somewhere around at that point that I really started looking for more underground bands in the heavy metal realm,
Nice. Curtis, you have
Um,
your follow-up face on.
I do have my follow-up face on, but it's kind of going on another tangent though. So unless I missed this at some point along the line and I just totally misheard it or something like that. So let's get back into the doobies question for a second here, because we keep talking about doom metal and stuff like that. Do you partake yourself as a first question?
Of what? Oh, no.
Okay.
Not in a long time.
I didn't think so. So here's my burning question, because you're pretty well entrenched in the doom metal scene with Ripple, and obviously you got Fistful of Doom with the name and stuff. Why do you think there is that so many people that are not into the weed are into the weed music? Just out of curiosity, because I think, if I'm not mistaken, there was a poll done in Wave Riders at one point where it was like 80% or 70% of all the people that listen to the stoner music didn't actually partake in the stoner stuff. So why do you think that?
I'm not sure. I don't think of it as that. I don't think of it as weed music, but I understand. I've seen, it's always, a lot of people, it's taken me a long time to figure out. I think of things differently than a lot of other people do, because one of the debates that I saw being involved with the Doom charts was how like stoner is like weed music and the devil and stuff like that. And one guy was really, really passionate about that. Almost if you didn't know, you would think that he was getting a little irritated. And I really don't think he was getting irritated, but I do think he was super passionate in his belief that music, it kind of revolves around that in some way. And I'm not disputing that, because I'm not a person that thinks of it that way. If it's something that I enjoy, if it's a band that I enjoy or whatever, I just go with that. I don't think of it as being weed music or Satan worshiping music or whatever.
Fair. Aaliyah, I want to hear your thoughts on this briefly before we continue. We got about 7 minutes. I just want to hear your thoughts on that, if you have any.
Not really. I don't think any particular genre has to revolve around any particular substance. So, I mean, I know for some people it might put you in a state of mind. There are arguments that, oh, well, one time you might happen to have a creative experience while under the influence of something, but that is not necessarily the cause of the creative experience. And then you keep going back to the substance to chase that experience. And maybe it works for some people, but I don't think it's a necessity for
Fair.
any genre.
Fair. Just curious. Okay, so we got like 6 minutes left, so we got a couple more questions we can do.
Cool. So Jamey, about the Fistful of Doom podcast, you play tracks on there. Sometimes bands get touchy about their tracks being played on a podcast. What do you think the benefits of having their tracks played on the podcast are? Like, why should a band want their track played on a podcast?
Yeah, I suppose the way I look at it is putting the music out there could only be a good thing. Understanding, of course, that sometimes if the album hasn't been released or something like that, they don't want you playing tracks prior to release because of opportunities for premieres at bigger sites and stuff like that. And that I fully understand. And it's a mistake I've made in the past. And I got an email from the band and from Curtis. And this is before I knew Curtis well.
Did I give you shit, Jamey? I don't even remember doing this. That's funny.
Yeah, and it was friendly from the band and from Curtis. And I can't even remember what band it was, but the band initially contacted me and was like, hey, man, the album hasn't been released yet, and we don't want any tracks, being played. And I know this is a big ask, but can you take it off the show? And the short answer was no, I can't. I just have to delete. The show is already recorded. I've already uploaded it. And yes, I can delete it, but I'm not going to, not to be a dick about it. It was my mistake. But I'm not going to delete the whole show over one track. It just didn't seem like that big a deal to me. But I've gone out of my way since then to make sure that I don't play tracks before the album is released unless I have permission by the PR person, the band, the label, whatever. But I think it benefits. So back to the original question. I think having the music out there can't do any harm as long as it's not interfering with like a premiere or something like that. I think having the music, the more avenues for the music to be out there, the better. That's my opinion.
I can follow up, Aaliyah. Cool. So
All right, I'm muted. Go ahead.
yeah, I know. I wasn't sure if you realized that. So Jamey, we got like 3 minutes left, so you gotta be quick on this here. So name 3 albums that people should listen to that are in the Doom genre from this year.
Oh God, that I can't do. I have a terrible memory.
You can do
when it comes to the bands, and I don't have my computer pulled up. I had it on a minute ago, but I was having issues, and I pulled it. I was trying to keep it on just for that potential question because my memory's so bad. Give me
Curtis
just a
has
minute,
a way of putting people on the spot.
I do.
Give me just a minute, though.
don't.
These might not all be Doom,
Okay.
because I don't just play Doom. I know you know that, Curtis. So I'll read off a couple of the albums that were on my Doom Charts submission if I can get there before time's up.
But you gotta hum the Jeopardy theme while you're doing this, Jim.
We didn't get him to rap, but we got him to hum the Jeopardy theme.
Messaged me 3 minutes ago
Okay.
asking if he rapped yet.
So here's a couple of great albums that I submitted this month. Some of them, I think most of them didn't make it, but in the top 25 anyway. Worm, their album Foreverglade is an amazing album. Megalith Levitation, Void Songs, that's another amazing album. Wasteland Coven has an amazing one as well. Empty Black, Lady Beast, definitely not Doom, but it is an amazing album. Non-Residents, also an amazing album. There's a bunch more. Bloodsport, Loose Sutures. Another one of your clients, Curtis, but I can't remember how to pronounce it. In Crucium Agir.
Oh, yeah, I think it's yeah.
Ajiri?
I even Googled it so I would say it right on the show, but
Corey
I've already
knows how to say it.
forgotten.
He does.
That's how crummy my memory is. Anyway, those are all
Cool.
great albums. You can check out the Doom charts anytime, and you can find a ton of great albums over there.
And we forgot to ask you about the Doom charts, but we are out of time. So, Aaliyah, do you have a final question for Jamey before we end off?
No, I don't. I think I'm good.
Cool. Jamey, do you have anything?
Out of time.
Yeah.
Since we're out of time.
Sorry. Jamey, do you have any final words you want to say before we end the program?
I'm always open to do track premieres over at the Ripple Effect blog, especially if it's something that I enjoy. I don't always, however, think enough in advance to do that. So for any bands, PR people, or whatever, hit me up if you've got something coming out and you want to do a track premiere. We can probably work it out. Unless I just think it's terrible, I'm sure we can work it out.
Awesome. So, Aaliyah, with that.
Until next time, everyone, make like a bull and throw those horns up.